So I need to do an updated video on this house. I know a lot of people have been wondering, and some people have been disappointed or, you know, complaining that nothing has really been done. And there's a reason for that, and I want to share with you why. And this, I'm learning right along with you, and I wanted to document all of these things I've been going through and trying to accomplish. This is actually quite normal for a situation like me, because I've been watching other videos. They usually go through the same process, and it always takes longer than they think. But the thing is, the benefit is that there's freedom ahead. And the only reason why that I'm able to go through this and the last 2 cold winters is because I feel the freedom that comes with this, and I feel the potential that comes with it. That's what gets me to keep going through this. And there are other videos and people experiencing that, and it takes way longer than they thought. It takes about 4 to 8 years or more to be able to start from scratch without getting loans, without getting going into debt, without renting and all this stuff. This is what a life looks like as I put the work and the hard, blood, sweat, and tears into that effort to become free. So that's what I love about this concept of work rather than the work of slavery. Because slaves work hard. They're hard workers, but it all depends on what your motivation is, what your direction is, and becoming free in your life. So I want to share with you the things that I have learned and the things that I have to do now. I'm in the process of moving into my little tiny house shed thing, and I had to sell my water heater and my furnace and all the things that have value still to be put all those resources into the tiny house to be able to live. I'm going to be quite comfortable in there now. And I'm able to get to the ceiling and also the foundation. And I couldn't be living in here during that time. So I needed to get this far so I can get these fundamentals done. And that's one thing I was learning, is I can't be in here. I could have used my trailer to live in, but I was doing okay up to this point in this house. So I need to make that transition. So if you ever get to that point, you have to live somewhere in a camper or something, or in a tiny house as you work on the bigger project. And every person I have seen do this in their life has that same thing. And of course, there's regulations against living in your camper while you build something, and or limitations on it. So we're forced to have to get into a mortgage and into debt. We can't escape it. So this is one of the ways of doing it. And this is taking longer than I thought, and I am just as frustrated as anybody, but I'm loving the process as I learn it. So the reasons behind this whole thing, is that I have this story all throughout my videos, but I'm going to try to compact it into this. I absolutely love doing certain things. I love my career path. I started into filmmaking. I got into video production. I got into all these writing, all these things that are project based, and I wasn't ever able to get a loan because those projects were never consistent enough. So I have to do it this way to be able to propel myself to doing what I love to do. Currently, I'm able to do those things. I have the freedom to do it. It's just this house is going to just take a long time to do within my own means, and I'm able to do it though. And what drives me is that feeling of freedom, but there's also great potential that we're all missing in our lives. And let me see if I can touch on some things that you may relate with. So Nikola Tesla, he says, and this is paraphrasing obviously, he said he was talking to JP Morgan during the time that he was presenting his ideas of having free energy, free power for everybody. And he says, if we didn't have this grid system, people could develop who they are supposed to be. And that says everything. So we could have gone the path of that way, of having the not have to pay the electric bill and all these things that affect our lives. But we went instead the other way, where now we have power lines, we rely on the grid and all this stuff. So let me share another thing. This is my friend, talks about our desires, appetites, and passions. It says, when harnessed properly, desires, appetites, and passions are intended by God as fuel to propel us to fulfill our potential. And within, he says, God has given us, each of us, uplifting, radiant desires as gifts to harness for our benefit, and they ought to be viewed as such. God expects us to use everything He has been given us before He gives us more. Desires, appetites, and passions are valuable assets that, when harnessed properly, can achieve great good. We have responsibility to make full use of these invaluable resources He has provided us before we can expect Him to assist us further. If we help each other discover, cultivate, and harness healthy passions, we will be helping ourselves and society at large. The phenomenon of the midlife crisis is real. It is the result of individuals reaching a point in their lives where they finally come to themselves and observe a lack of fulfillment they have achieved thus far. This is a result of them not having fulfilled their personal potential, which is defined as harnessing one's passions to serve a greater purpose and meaning. Individuals experiencing this lose all motivation, fall into depression, and sometimes endure great personal pain and anguish as they grapple with the truth of their lost opportunities. Not only does society experience a loss of immediate productivity, but this is indicative of a much larger waste in years of potential energy misspent through lives half lived. So can you relate to that in some level? And I think all of us can feel that. This is what we're living in, is in a grid system where we're dependent on everything. And some people are able to work through it. Some people are not. Some people, they have health problems and it destroys their life. They lose their house and everything. So we are living in a very volatile, very unstable life. And even if we have a quote-unquote stable job, which I believe doesn't exist, but if something happens, we don't have that job anymore, or health, or job layoffs or whatever, then we lose our house at the same time if we're renting and we have a mortgage. So our lives are really unstable if we're in that condition. But if you have a house that is paid for and if you own and control your property, you now have a more stable life than anybody else with any other stable job or whatever, because you've got your house. Even if you lose your job or your health, you have your house. So this is gives me a great deal of peace knowing this, and also excitement knowing that I'm able to put my time into traveling, writing books, working on experiments, producing energy, alternative health methods, and I'm able to research all of this stuff. It takes hours. It's a full-time job doing that. But this is the kind of work I love. This is the work that I hold on to. The concept of work. Some people say just work. That's the solution to everything, and there's a great value in work. I would say that's true, but slaves work hard too. It all depends on what your condition is and what you're working for. I feel free in my life, but I'm putting so much hard work into this and into knowing what to do and learning a lot of different things. I have to learn exactly how to do all this stuff. Hook up a furnace, water heater, do the plumbing, the electricity, how to do the walls, what are weight-bearing walls, how do I build something from scratch, how do I repair all this stuff, and I have to learn it on my own to be able to do it. And so after I've been learning all this stuff, then I'm more educated. Plus, I have the freedom to take a break if I want. I could take a couple days and just sleep if I want. I can play video games. But I'm doing all this stuff because I know I have a freedom to do it. And it's incredibly amazing where you could harness your power, harness your energy when you have the feeling of freedom. It's not like the feeling of slavery. Even though I'm just anxious to get this thing up and running and living. But my little tiny house shed is going to do very well in helping me get to that step. It's temporary, but I'll be able to get there. So this has great relationship to addictions and the reasons why we do coping things. I want to touch on this because it's important to understand. People are discovering what addiction actually is. There's a guy, I forget his name, I wrote him in my book actually, it's a perfect example. He says addiction probably shouldn't be called addiction anymore, it should be called bonding. Because we tend, as human beings, we tend to bond to things for fulfillment. And whenever we're missing out on something or not fulfilled in some way, something's missing in our life to positively fulfill our lives, then we go to coping mechanisms. We go to coping things that give us just a slight kick or something, but there's no fulfillment afterwards. So the reason why I go across all these ideas is because it has a basis of what I'm thinking as I'm doing these things, and I'm able to have more freedom to pursue those things, those greater purposes, discover those things that God has given me, and I want to share that with everybody else too. I would love for people to find their freedom, find their, they've got their stability with their house, they've got, more freedom in their lives, freedom from trying to survive all the time, and to be able to do what you love to do. This is not just a pipe dream, but you can do this yourself, and this is the kind of work that it takes to get there. But it's worth it. There's so much happiness that springs up inside, and of course it takes a lot of miracles and a lot of faith and inspiration from God, and because there's problems that I had to work out. I had to figure out what to do. I had to learn a lot of things. I had to and a lot of miraculous things I never would have thought of if it wasn't for a good old fashioned inspiration. But it's one of those things that we have to rely on, this faith, knowing that it'll work as we go forward. And there's a lot of those steps to take. But I just wanted to share that along with my faith in God and Jesus Christ, and becoming closer to them is going to give you greater peace and provide. And they want you to be free. As they enjoy freedom and peace, Jesus Christ has provided a way for us to be free in our soul, and we could feel those freedoms even if we're in prison, or an actual prison, or we feel like the walls around us are a prison. Jesus Christ can make us feel free in our soul, and that's what his whole plan is. That's what his whole purpose is. So this is a representation of that. I feel free in my soul, even though my physical surroundings doesn't really reflect that, but at least I feel it inside. So God bless you, and may the Lord be with you. No matter what happens in our future, we can make our own future with God and Jesus Christ in our lives.